There's nothing like your first Mac. Here's what people online are sharing. @Dr. Rain says, everything is just so smooth and fast, I still can't get over it. Syncing stuff between my phone and this is just chef's kiss. @Mr. Incredible 488 says, Apple Silicon basically cures low battery trauma. That's how they felt with their first Mac. How will you? Introducing the all-new MacBook Neo. An amazing Mac at a surprising price. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi. Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
One thing to watch out for in this whole discussion, the so-called peace talks or ceasefire talks with Iran, is that they have a history. They can lose the war, but they try to win the peace, and they try to string us along forever until we run out of energy. I don't really think President Trump would permit that. As our next guest is arguing, Iran will try to string us along and sell us a bad deal, but businessman Trump won't let it happen. So let's bring in and welcome back to the show General Jack Keane, retired four-star general. He's chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, and he's a Fox News senior strategic analyst, also Presidential Medal of Freedom recipient. General Keane, thank you, sir, for helping us out as you have these several weeks of this war. One question I don't understand exactly. The talks are in Pakistan, and President Trump has made it very clear that Iran can have no nuclear weapons, the enriched uranium, and also they have got to open up the Strait of Hormuz. But in Pakistan, are there any Iranian negotiators? Is there direct discussion between Iranians and the American delegation, or is this all indirect through Pakistan?
No. It should be direct negotiations. Obviously, R3 is Vance, Wickoff, and Kushner, and they have two principals. One is Gabeloff, who's the Speaker of their parliament, and Abbas Agrachi, who's who's their foreign minister. So the talks are supposed to be direct, and that's why both parties are going there. Sometimes, dealing with these negotiations, and the Iranians are in the same hotel, but they're passing messages back and forth, but not in the same room. This one is supposed to be in the same room. My concern about the talks really haven't changed. The Iranians got what they want when they took control of the Strait of Hormuz, and that's to stop the war. That was objective one. And they're still in control of the Straits of Hormuz. And so it's not the number of ships that are going by. Let's assume they got 100 ships a day going through, which was sort of what was taking place pre-war. Let's assume that actually happens. I don't think it can, because there's only a single channel in terms of a waterway that's open, and they're also having to go through the process of making sure everybody's paying the fee. But the issue is not the number of ships going through, although people who are concerned about the economy, that would likely be fine with them. But the issue is that Iran is in control of the Straits of Hormuz, and they're deciding who goes through and when they go through, and we cannot let that stand. This is, according to the sealed law, this is free passage of an international transit area. And no more than we could let the Gibraltar Straits fall under the hands of a foreign power, the Taiwan Straits, the Bab al-Mandab Straits that leads to the Suez Canal fall under a foreign power. Panama Canal and Suez Canal are on the property of those two countries, and that is clearly a different matter, and they certainly can charge a fee. But freedom of navigation and keeping the world's waterways open is something the United States has been involved in for over 200 years, as a vital national interest, Larry. Even when we had wooden ships, we were beginning to move out into the oceans to protect our trade routes. And certainly as we matured as a nation and we went to iron ships and the rest of them and moved from steam, etc., on to nuclear power. The reality is that we have a blue water navy. First and foremost is to keep the international waterways free, to keep trade moving, because our economy rests on it. The prosperity of the nation is there. It has always been a vital national interest, so we cannot let that stand. And when it comes to the negotiations, I don't trust these guys at all. They'll look right at your face and lie. They'll pretend they're willing to make concessions. What do they want out of the negotiations? They want to drag this out, I believe, so that the people get used to the fact that the straits are open. The world economy is gradually returning to more normal oil pricing. Our market in the country is going up, and there's less political pressure on the president. And therefore, to make it that much more difficult to return to combat operations. I mean, I'm so suspect of these guys, even if they said yes to everything we're asking of them. And the vice president said, that's great. We're finally going to have a deal here. Well, wonderful, you've agreed to everything. I still don't trust them. Because they can renege at any point on this and say, oh, wait a second, we really didn't mean this. So they have lots of ploys as negotiators. They have been at this for decades, and they're absolutely very good at it. They're clever, and they believe the pressure is on us, and there's less pressure on them. The fact of the matter is we still have huge leverage here. One is if you don't make a deal here in the next several days, we're going back to combat operations, and the president has said that. Two, we can tell them privately that Cargill, this deal falls through, we intend to take control of Cargill and blow it up. And that is what you're facing down the road in dealing with the United States, because we truly intend to finish this once and for all. So we still have lots of leverage. We did give up leverage, certainly going to ceasefire, and the war got stopped. But we still have lots of leverage here in dealing with these Iranian negotiators.
You know, General, one of these points, and I've been talking about this, that you can never trust them, you can never verify. But I don't really want Iran to have any money right now. I mean, I don't want them to charge a toll over the Strait of Hormuz. Not now, not ever, but especially now. I don't want them to be able to have money and rearm or rebuild. I mean, I'm reading stuff in the papers and the media about China helping them to rebuild all of the military equipment and military sites that we blew up. I mean, I don't want them to have. I want the United States to determine money through the Hormuz and the disposition or the disbursement of money. I don't want Iran in control. And one of the things that concerns me is one way or another they're going to regain control.
Well, I've always favored we would, 2 weeks, maybe a few days longer than that, from completing our combat operations. And I think the last thing we would have done in those combat operations was Cargill. And we had a couple of options there, and that is threaten to take control of it or blow it up, or actually take control of it, and that is physically on the ground or blockade it or mine it, and threaten the regime as a result of that. And if they don't comply, what would we want at that point? One, we would want all of the nuclear enrichment, let us come in and take it, and whatever other conditions we want to impose on them at that point. And if they stiffed us on it, then we would destroy it, and that would collapse their economy. And it wouldn't necessarily mean the end of the regime immediately, but they would be in by far the weakest condition they could ever be, because 60% of their revenue is there. And they would have trouble at some point with all the people that work for them actually being able to compensate them. Fractures would take place in that regime, and I think they would at least be on a pathway to some kind of regime collapse. I have always preferred that option. This negotiated settlement option, the reason why I have lots of concerns about it, because at the end of the day, even if they agree to everything, they'll drag that out for weeks and months before it actually is executed, we throw them a lifeline. We have to remove sanctions, primary and secondary sanctions for sure. We'll have to unfreeze the assets. This is billions of dollars heading their way. And in a way, that's very similar to what previous administration Obama did when sanctions were removed. And that really gives the regime a lifeline. Now, they're hurt seriously. I'm not suggesting we haven't done real damage to these guys. And they have no industrial base, defense or otherwise, to speak of any consequence. And that alone is debilitating, much less pretty much most of their Navy, no Air Force, and most of their, at least 2/3 of their missiles and drones destroyed. But the reality is that leaves the regime alive and ability to recover and to rebuild. And I don't think that is acceptable. I don't believe we give these guys a lifeline. And that's why I have always favored go to the end on this in combat operations and let's finish and reduce their capabilities as much as we possibly can and avoid negotiations because of the reasons I just stated.
Well, one place that I have to disagree with the president on is on the regime change point that you just made. And you and I talked a bit about this on the TV show, but the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is still there. It looks like they're still running the show. I assume they'll be well represented at this negotiating table, whatever it is, in Pakistan. And we haven't had a true regime change. Civilians aren't running the country, non-IRGC civilians aren't running the country. Whatever level of destruction, we've killed 3 levels of leadership. Okay, there's a 4th level. There may be a 5th level. And those guys are still speaking for the country. So regime changes, it's not accurate, right? Same crowd. And you pointed out, and they have an business incentive to stay in power. It's like a mafia operations. It's like the Mexican drug cartels. They're running the economy as well as the military. So we haven't seen a real regime change yet.
No, you're absolutely right about this. I mean, these guys are a couple of tiers down, to be sure, but nonetheless, Gabalov, who's in the negotiations, he's a former general in the IRGC. You couldn't be any more hardline than that. And then he moved into civilian leadership position. He's the guy we're negotiating with. The foreign minister, he's weak. He's a sideliner. He's not a principal decision maker there. He's there for window dressing because of his title. The guy that's there, Gabalov. And then the man you don't see is a man by the name of Ahmed Vahidi, and he is the top guy in the IRGC. And I'm telling you, when you get into who he is and what he's done, he reminds you of Qasem Soleimani. This guy is absolutely inflexible. The president of Iran had asked him to stop attacking the Arab states because he was concerned about the coalition of those countries coming against them, and that was not the intent. They initially were not going to get involved, and they were telling that to the United States. And by doing so, we've united them against us, is the point the president of Iran is making. He said this is a strategic mistake. And he's not telling him to do it because he knows he won't agree with him. He asked them to stop, and he said, no, I'm not stopping. That's what he said to the president. The IRGC is in charge of this country. That is the reality. They are as hardline as anybody that's been there before. And I believe you could make a case they're even more hardline because their resolve has been stiffened as opposed to broken. The Khamenei, the Ayatollah, has been killed. His son is still wounded to the point where he visibly can't take charge, and I'm not certain he ever will be able to reflect the kind of leadership that his father had. And that may be the subtle regime change that has taken place, that the Ayatollah going forward will be a titular figurehead and much less what the previous two Ayatollahs have been, where they actually were in charge and making all the strategic decisions. Believe me, hardliner IRGC people are running this country, and Gabeloff is right there as a civilian leader supporting all of that. And they are absolutely as hardline as anybody that has been there before. Yes, it is true that we're a few tiers down, but I think it's not all that relevant, because they're the same theocratic, radical extremists who have been running this regime, for 47 years.
And they own the businesses. They own much of the economy. That's an important point. They're not going to give up easily. Cause I like the mob metaphor. They're running. The economy is them. Now, it may not be totally, but the arms makers, let's say the heavy industry guys, they have a big piece of that. Now, that may have been destroyed, but they're not going to give up anything without a fight. So they'll try to string us along on that point as well. I assume President Trump understands this when he says regime change. I assume that, and I assume that we are ready to go back into combat because our troops, our great military troops, are still there. But it does give a little breathing room to Iran. I guess that's the point you're making. We perhaps. Yeah,
it does. Well, we have a couple of things. I do think, the CIA director is briefing him on a regular basis every single day. And certainly, I know for a fact the Israelis told me they have a huge dossier on Ahmad Vahidi, and they believe he is as hardline as anybody that's ever existed in the IRGC. And they have all the evidence to prove it. They believe that Gabeloff is as hardline as anybody. And Gabeloff, as I said, was an IRGC general. Actually, at one time in his career in the late 90s, he was in charge of repressing the people and killing thousands of people in the streets. They are in charge of everything. And listen, they want to hold on. Why? They have an incredible lifestyle. All of these people are independently wealthy. They represent authoritarian regimes just like exist in China, just like existed in Venezuela, just like exists in Russia. These guys at the top and the elites all around them, they pocket all the money. They have homes in other countries. They have an incredible lifestyle. They don't want to give that up. They don't want to give up the power they have. And they're going to stick with this as much as they can.
You were talking about how the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, they pocket the money, they live great lifestyles, and they don't want to give up any of that as best they can fight it. And I guess my last point, since I know you're correct on that, is, we need a clear ultimatum, I think, from President Trump. Now, he has said, more or less, that the military can be redeployed into combat if the Iranians don't deliver on these peace talks. But I think he has to get stronger and stronger in the days ahead on that point.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I think a public declaration would have been best in terms of using the timeline, because their objective is to delay and kick this can down the road and make it harder to restart. So stay on the timeline. He has said that. And also, I think privately it's even more important what they're saying to him. And it doesn't necessarily have to be public, but I'm hoping it's in private, that we're not making progress here. We're picking up our bags and moving out. And you can guarantee that we're restarting combat operations. However, in the meantime, the issue remains, Larry. Regardless of negotiations or not, Iran is in charge of the Straits of Hormuz.
Yes.
The number of ships passed, as I indicated, that's one thing. But leaving them in control, we cannot do that. And there's two operations that we can conduct to move in the right direction. One is to stop the Iranian tankers, stop Iranian oil from when it gets to the Gulf of Oman, when it gets through the Straits, and blockade it. And that's an operation we can execute. That's going to China, India, Pakistan, and Turkey. and let them know what's in the offing.
Yes, sir.
And two, if that doesn't change anything, then we physically open the Straits of Hormuz using a military operation, which is very, very achievable, and Admiral Cooper is prepared to execute. Those are two things we can do.
I got to stop. Thank you, General Keane.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.